Actually, no, I want you to like dive into that more because this is a common thing. I when we went to Monerotopia together, we
Hmm.
listened to a whole discussion that someone was having about how using. I don't know if this is a direct quote, but I think this is almost a direct quote. If you use
Okay.
Monero on a proprietary system, you're instantly compromised.
Hmm.
Pretty much saying that the entire selling point of Monero, everything that Monero does, just doesn't matter if you do it on Windows, was pretty much the takeaway. And actually, I really want you to talk about this because it's something I see a ton, which is a lot of people think, well, I'm on Windows anyway, so it doesn't matter if I use a password manager. Or I'm on Windows anyway, so why does it matter if I move over to Signal? And so, do you mind speaking to that? Because I think a lot of people just assume that if you're on a privacy invasive operating system, it doesn't matter what happens on top of it.
I can see an argument for the idea that like your operating system is kind of the base of everything and you have to secure it. But I also don't think, like, realistically, the threat of your operating system being compromised is like orders of magnitude lower than the threat of like the service that you're using being compromised or the browser that you're using being compromised or like the risk of your privacy being compromised if you don't use a service like a password manager and things like that. I mean, you just have to realize that most people are using um, stuff like Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, or they're using non-private payment methods instead of Monero and switching to something like Brave, switching to something like Monero. That's going to be a much bigger impact, I feel, than like continuing to use um, unencrypted an unencrypted email provider and like a non-private payment service while using like Linux or something. Like fixing the operating system doesn't fix all of the other things that you're using, basically.
Right. Definitely a balancing act. I think obviously it's really
Yeah.
nice to be on a privacy friendly operating system where it just respects your privacy
Hmm.
out of the box. But just because the operating system collects telemetry about, like, let's say Windows can report back to Microsoft literally every program you use, how often you use it, and like let's say it knows you're using Signal. That doesn't discount the fact that you're getting top end to end encryption with all your contacts.
Right.
That still protects the message. It still protects your other contacts, so it's still a non-selfish thing too. Not everything's about us. A lot of
Hmm.
like what we recommend that people do actually keeps the people around them safer as well. And so there are still benefits. Like think about it that way. This is actually a big side tangent. Like I agree with everything you said, but the side tangent here is like a lot of you people listening probably have tried to convince all of your contacts to move over to your favorite end-to-end encrypted messenger of your choice. Session, Signal, Threema, doesn't matter. And I bet none of the people you try to convince to move over to them are using Linux. Does that mean they shouldn't use it? Like
Hmm.
you need to get out of like I will confidently say this and I will be very firm about this. Like if you are going to like gatekeep the whole like just don't I'm not going to use this privacy service on this operating system, then you can't have that expectation for other people either who you want to be using your software for your own needs. Then like at that point you need to get your head out of your ass. Like it's more important than just you. Things like end-to-end encrypted messaging, end-to-end encrypted emails, things of that nature, it keeps everyone safe, not just an individual. And if other people are using them on Windows, it's still a net gain to everyone else. So even from like a
That is
societal.
exactly why that quote from the Monero conference. That's why it is so funny to me. I think because if you're literally at a conference where they're promoting privacy protecting cryptocurrency, like why would you want to go out of your way to discourage everyone who is using Monero just because they're also using Windows, right? Like
Right.
from that perspective, you should be glad that they are trying to use Monero before you try to say that they're instantly compromised because they're using some other service with it, right?
Right. It's just
It's
not that
weird.
effective, I feel. It's just going to move send people away from privacy solutions. And on top of
Right.
that, like I want to see the evidence. There is so much evidence and so much research that's been done on all the ways that you're tracked online, and it's real.
Hmm.
There is as far as I'm concerned, there isn't something that demonstrates, oh yeah, Microsoft can just like log into their system and like just completely take over your operating system, steal your private keys inside your own little private like Monero client, and then they're gonna
Hmm.
send that to advertisers. You better back up that claim. You know, like that's a serious claim. Like you're pretty much making that large of a claim. And look, I'm the last person to say Windows is a privacy respecting. I'm getting furious. No, I'm the last person to say that like Windows is a privacy respecting operating system. It has tons of privacy issues, but there's a big difference between Windows collecting telemetry and having all this invasive stuff that goes on, and them straight up stealing data from your operating system and sending it to some boogeyman, whoever it is. I don't know. Is it the CEO? Is it like the security team? Like I don't know, but there's some boogeyman that's just straight up stealing like your actual like Monero keys. Like it's a whole different ball game. So I don't know. That's I'm
Absolutely.
so
That is
upset that
this is
I
one
I
of the
lost my
biggest
train
things
of
for
thought.
me.
What?
Like that is one of the biggest things for me, and it's kind of frustrating having this discussion with people. But I really think that people need to focus on like real actual threats before theoretical threats.
Exactly.
Like dealing with all of these theoretical issues with Windows, for example, is good. It's something you should do, but it's not something that you need to prioritize first, just because the risk seems the biggest. Because it's your operating system. It seems like if that was compromised, that would be really bad. But there are so many other actual risks that have been proven to exist and make a big impact. Maybe they're not as big as an OS compromise, but they're more likely than an OS compromise, right? So focus on those, and then only when you've secured yourself against all of that can you like work on securing against theoretical security threats. But like the the most recent example that comes to mind is that story about um what is it called? I don't remember. When you like plug in your phone to like a USB port at the airport, for example, and like people were always saying for years and years um, that they could steal all of your data if you did that. When in reality, like the risk of that happening is non-existent. That's literally never been proven to have happened in at any point in history, and there are protections against that kind of thing. But like even as recently as last year, you'll see like government agencies and security experts like say that you need to avoid that kind of thing, um, when it actually doesn't make a difference. And there are so many things that you could be doing that do actually make a difference, and that's the main thing. I don't want theoretical risks to distract you from the risks that are out there in the wild that you need to protect against, right?
1,000%. I mean, I have two things to add here. One, this is by far, I think the so with my individual coaching that I have with people one on one, right? Like the individual consulting coaching, this is like the number one thing that I deal with. It's like people come in, they're like, I want to do this, and I go, okay, do you have a password manager? Oh no, and it's like, then how come you're trying to like have like they'll present me what they want to do, which is super extreme, and I ask why, and I listen to their why, and I go, okay, first, I don't, and I'll explain why. Like maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. It doesn't matter. But also, then when you start like really diving into things, you'll realize that like the basics are just not even done, and they're
Mm-hmm.
super exposed, and they have a lot of these issues that they never even considered because they just want to go for that extreme hypothetical threat instead of the real threat. And so I totally agree. It's the number one thing I see when I'm doing coaching and consulting. It's individuals who are looking at hypothetical threats instead of real threats. The other thing I'll say is this is not specific to privacy. I think this is just like an internet problem. I think that all across the internet, regardless of the field, everyone shouts things. Everything is loud,
Mm-hmm.
and so everything seems important, and it's hard for someone who's not educated and doesn't have like a nuanced approach to things to be able to sort through what's important and what's not important. And like even on like if you look at YouTube and privacy alone, you're gonna see like people who are gonna make videos like delete signal because of this like very particular issue that like won't even impact most people. And that's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be just as loud as someone saying delete Facebook because Facebook has a mountain of issues which impact everybody and society and democracies, but they're gonna be just as loud when it's a YouTube video. So I don't think it's just a privacy issue. I think it's an internet issue. This is also seen in a lot of other places as well, like in the health world. It seems like, exercising and eating well is to the same loudness as taking an ice bath. Like everyone just thinks ice baths are just going to make them healthy, and I'm like, interesting. It seems like people care more about the ice baths than just eating a proper whole foods diet. Like it's crazy to me. So I think it's actually a pretty universal issue if I were to say.